Revelation 976. From the 23rd of June 1939. Divine Will. Earthly measures. Serving everything spiritual. Understand that the world with all that is in it serves the Lord of heaven and earth. It is animated with His Spirit, and even if this Spirit does not recognize itself correctly, even if it wants to escape from the eternal divinity, it must serve also against its will and submit to the will of the Lord. And this expresses itself in the determination of every work of creation, its task and activity in the whole universe. And only in this way the immutability of the laws of nature is explainable. Only in this way it is to be understood that everything must happen in such a way and forms itself in nature, as it is. And the will of man can change nothing about it. Because God's will stands above His will. Since immemorial times, everything created is the will of God that has become form from the smallest creature, up to man. Everything is subject to the divine will and cannot fight against it, and, whether, also earthly rulers apparently determine the events, so these can always form themselves only if the Lord gives His permission. He has at any time the power to prevent what goes against His will. However, since it is a matter of the maturing of the spiritual, since everything existing contains spiritual in itself and every event serves the further development of this spiritual, the divine Creator also allows the will of man to be carried out. Although it violates the divine order, only the consequences of such a will have a disastrous effect on man himself. And again, no event is without any benefit in spiritual terms, even if it results in the greatest misery on earth. Suffering and sorrow are aids to spiritual higher development. And so also measures which the human will imposes with bad intentions and which therefore cannot correspond to the divine will change again into spiritual means of education and thus to be a blessing for weak, but God-seeking earthly children, whereas the unlawful action of those who dispose of them, falls back on them and must be atoned for accordingly. The will of man is free. However, the Lord changes everything brought about by this will according to necessity to salutary events serving the salvation of the soul. But everything else, which is not yet in the human stage, is subject to the will of God all the time and has to go its way through all matter always according to the divinely wise plan. And there is no power, whatsoever, which can work against this will. Therefore the spirit out of God, which however does not recognize Him, is banished in the form that is completely directed by the divine will, until the last embodiment and his activity in the universe is assigned to him. The human acting and thinking lets the erroneous opinion arise that man stand completely independent in the earth life. However, also this is in a certain, that is earthly sense, constantly steered, as far as it is conducive for spiritual advancement. But all spiritual life is completely free from influence. In earthly relation, the will of man is respected as far as possible and the effects are weakened or changed to the good as necessary for the salvation of the individual soul. In spiritual relationship, however, no being has to fear a compulsion of will. But all spiritual power is at the disposal of the being, just as all spiritual vice versa, however, has to serve the Lord of heaven and earth, but only for the purpose that it develops itself again upwards, to the spiritual height, in order to finally also be able to go through the stage as man and the associated freedom of will, which provides the last possibility to overcome matter and to reach a spiritual state of maturity, which means redemption from imprisonment which lasted for thousands of years. Amen.